Hello, my unraveled friends. Welcome back. Or if you're new here, welcome. I'm Tiff. This is Tiff Unraveled. We've been following the Karina Cooper trial. Yesterday, I just got kind of bogged down at work. I was barely able to listen to the trial at all, barely took any notes, but I was able to listen late last night and early this morning while getting ready for work on super speed. And I was able to catch up and catch some things. That was trial day 4. Today was trial day 5. So I just want to give you guys an update and kind of a little recap, without all the extra stuff. Again, if you want every single detail, I of course highly suggest going and watching the trial, but I still want to talk about it with you, so here we are. So again, yesterday started trial day 4. We had our first witness. His name was Kenneth Martin. He was a forensic analyst. He was highly focused on blood pattern analysis in this case, and some crime scene reconstruction. Super smart guy, very descriptive about all the blood spatter stuff, right? Gravity and impact and how all these things can affect blood patterns and blood stains, and talked about smears and swipes and all the differences between all of these things, right? I think he talked and educated the jury for over an hour before we ever even got to the crime scene. So it was a lot. I'm going to just kind of tell you the takeaway. Close range bullet wounds to Ryan Cooper in his face. And he based this on the stippling that was present. There were no exit wounds. Both bullets were taken from the wounds themselves. We see Karina crying at these photos of Ryan. And then Mr. Martin then went on to some evidence that he examined the bloody shoe impressions in front of the home, noticed one little isolated blood stain at the base of the stairway leading away to what he called the sewing room. I still have not been able to get really familiar with the layout of the home, and of course he was analyzing photos and things of the blood and the blood spatter, the blood evidence. So of course he mentioned seeing all the photos of Karina sitting on Ryan. He talked a decent amount about his belief that obviously the crime scene was altered, whether intentionally or unintentionally, but based on the pictures of him seeing Karina rubbing her face on the same side of the face where Ryan's wounds were inflicted. He also talked about the clotting and the drying of the blood. He did say that some time had amassed before these photos, or before police had arrived, and he was talking about how the pool of blood was so large, and he couldn't pin down a time, but basically was saying with the bloody shoe impressions, right? In order for those shoes to pick up enough blood to leave those shoe impressions outside, I mean, some time would have had to go on for this pool to form, which in my eyes kind of contradicts the "I heard a loud noise, I got up to check it out, and I found my husband," because there was time for this blood to pool in next to Ryan's recliner. He also did mention that when Ryan was shot, it definitely shows that he was in a reclined position, but at some point before police arrived was moved to the still in the chair but a more upright and leaned over to the left position, because that's where the blood was pooling, was on the left side of Ryan. So he talked about the fact that the door, there was blood spatter on the inside, but then there was also blood spatter on the outside of the door that came from the pool. So the drops, that were kind of spattering off the pool, which again shows that the door was open at some point before police arrived, after enough time had elapsed that pool was large enough for blood spatter to be created on the outside of the door as well, and then reclosed at some point again, because police said when they arrived, the door was closed. That's kind of the takeaway there. Kind of, again, reiterating to me that the story, the initial account given by Karina, just couldn't really have been true, because some time had passed for that blood to pool and for an actual, almost a puddle to form enough so that bloody footprints and bloody shoe impressions were able to pick up enough of that blood and leave that trace evidence. Some bloody footprints were found in the house, obviously, but we do know one of the children slipped. They just were not able to correlate these particular footprints with any particular person. So it could have been the child. Of course, it could have been Karina. Next up, we had DCI criminalist. His name was Steve Tverdik. He kind of went into the shoe impressions a little bit more as well, how they didn't match the muck boots that were found at the scene. He did go into that. He also went into the door, explaining that the door was closed during the shooting, or their reconstruction of the crime scene showed that the door was closed during the shooting, open while the blood was wet and pooling, and then closed again before police arrived. He also mentioned some like taking the doorknob and stuff for fingerprints, but that nothing suitable was found there. So we had DCI criminalist, Brenda Reinhardt, who also came in and just testified about some swabs that she took to try to extract DNA from them. I think blood stain off from the sewing room, blood stain from the entryway. I think that the doorknobs, like I said, were collected as well. But she actually decided that because it was a smooth surface and you can't do both fingerprint and DNA from the same exact surface, that it would have been better processed by a fingerprint analyst. So they didn't swab the door for DNA. And yeah, so that was pretty much her testimony. She was on and off pretty quickly, but just talking about the swabs that she collected, from that scene. So then the last witness to testify yesterday was Ryan's older sister, Michelle Wilson. Now, she got on not so much as a personal witness, but more to testify about some financial stuff. So Michelle was the bookkeeper and accountant for Cooper Farms, the corporation. So she kind of went into a little bit of background. They talked about some assets that were owned by the farm as opposed to owned by Ryan himself. All that kind of stuff. She didn't know when asked, which rightfully so. She didn't know a whole lot about their personal financial situation, just more about the farm's finances and things. But what her testimony, the takeaway from her testimony was ultimately that when Ryan passed away, when Ryan was taken away, Karina also sold his vehicle for about $80,000, and then a couple of pieces of farm equipment totaling about $100,000. So yesterday, actually, I didn't do this yesterday. I'm sorry, guys. So the last update, we talked about the fact that she received from life insurance over, I think it was close to like $550,000. Let me see if I can dig through it really quick. Maybe not. It's fine. A lot of money. She got a lot of money. Hold please. Found it. I forgot that I was writing on a different pad because I forgot my other one. So I was digging through the other one. I'm like, I know I wrote that down and I couldn't find it. I found it. $536,606. I know you guys don't care that much, but $539,606. But it was I couldn't let it go. I had to find it. Anyway, so right, we're talking about $540,000 that she had already received. Well, then Ryan's sister gets on the stand and was like, oh yeah, by the way, also this. So now we're adding another $180,000 to that. I mean, we're looking at close to like $700,000. Maybe a little more. I can't do math. I have a calculator, but I don't want you guys to get irritated with me. So anyway, yes, that's where we left it. We left yesterday on kind of a like, wow, so there was even more. I mean, by the time Karina was done cashing checks, she had over $700,000, probably closer to $750,000. And Ryan's sister also said, it was like, she did testify also to the fact that there were things Karina wanted to do that Ryan would was never really agreeable to. Like, she wanted to start another business, and there's like a little gnat flying around my room, and I don't know where it came from, and I can't capture it. Anyway, so all this stuff that she wanted to do, finish remodeling the house or build a second lake home or, these things that Ryan just wasn't down for. And they asked her, so after Ryan passed away, somebody might go away. What are you doing? Okay, I'm going to get him later. After Ryan's passing, did Karina end up doing some, any, or all of these things? And Ryan's sister said, yeah, she did. She actually opened up like 2 storefronts in Traer and then ended up, taking that merchandise and selling from home, that kind of thing. So she was able, and then she also sold her vehicle and then used that money to invest in like a newer vehicle for herself, which, nothing inherently wrong with buying a new car. But guys, hold on. I got to get this thing. I think I got it, but I can't find it, but I don't see it. Hold on. All right. So that concluded the day yesterday, which brings us to today. Trial day 5, Iowa v. Karina Cooper. And here we go. First witness, Bradley C. He worked for Nolan Farms with, guess who? Houston Danker. Bradley got on the stand to tell all of us beautiful people that Houston Danker came to work one day, summer, fall 2023. Me and this fly are about to have a showdown. Summer, fall, late summer, early fall, he said, as best he could recall. It was during that time that Mr. Danker came to work and said, hey, bud, something about like he was moving out of his house and into his girlfriend's house. His girlfriend had a daycare, and so he couldn't have guns. Can you take my guns? Bradley said, yeah, he agreed. And so to work following that question, Houston Danker brought 3 firearms to give to Mr. Bradley. He brought him an AR-15. He brought him a double-barrel shotgun, and he brought him listen, I don't know anything about guns, but Ruger 22 caliber rifle. And then I think kind of after all of this stuff started going down, Bradley was like, hold on, I'm so fed up. Seriously. I think I missed this part during my work day because it is a detail that apparently I didn't write down, which kind of bugs me a little bit. But I do know that at some point, and I'm not quite sure when or why, I don't know if it was before Houston's arrest or after Houston's arrest, Bradley Seek decided that his best move was to turn these firearms over to law enforcement. And that was pretty much what he was there to testify to. Went to work. Houston said, hey, bud, can you keep my guns for me? Bradley said, sure, I guess. Houston brought the guns to work. And at some point, Bradley decided these need to go to law enforcement. And so that's what he did. Okay. And then next up, we had second witness of the day. His name was Deputy Brian Randall with the Tama County Sheriff's Office. Really quick witness, again, on and off. Basically, he was there to confirm that he was the deputy that our first witness, Bradley Seek, turned the firearms over to. And that was pretty much it. Next witness was DCI toxicologist and crime scene analyst, Jonna Berry. Now she, once Houston Danker was arrested, was tasked with going to his home and seeing if they could find any residual evidence. Mind you, this is 3 years later, so she had quite a feat in front of her. So in May of 2024, she went to Houston's residence to try to find like any traces of blood, the clothing that he was reportedly wearing that night. They obviously were using their Blue Star, which is the agent that they put on, areas that will, light up the blood stains that are not, no longer visible to the naked eye. And when she did that, she did find some positive blood reactions on a carpet and on the carpet and the white rug in the living room, some in the kitchen. And then she also collected a pair of Vans, some more shoes of Houston Danker's. She is storming. I'm fighting flies and thunderstorms today, and I'm losing my mind. So if you hear the thunder, I apologize. Well, she collected a bunch of shoes, but she made note that the Vans that she collected, the pattern on the bottom of those vans was consistent with, in her opinion, with the bloody shoe impressions that were found at the scene. Those were found sitting in the entryway with some other shoes. So she collected all of those. She said she collected some iPhones, and then she found like outside 14 fired 22 shell casings. So that was her job. She went, she cut out the pieces of carpet, the rug, all of that, and sent it off to DCI for examination. So next up on the stand, we had Sabrina Seehofer, DCI Crime Lab, and she specializes in DNA analysis. She was the one that all of the evidence that was collected from Houston Danker's home was sent to. Some clothing, some shoes, the carpet, and some of the swabs. Now, she went through a big long thing, but essentially at the end of the day, no DNA was found. No extractable, relevant DNA was found 3 years later. So, I mean, and prosecution did say, what would be some reasons for this? She was like, obviously, I mean, it's been 3 years. Passage of time is going to diminish any DNA evidence that may have been available 3 years ago. People clean their homes, people, so we were just, too little too late at this point. That was the takeaway from her testimony. Fifth witness, a man named Victor Murillo, also from the DC Crime Lab, specializes in firearms and ballistics. And essentially, he got on the stand to say that he did a whole educational thing about ballistics and what all that stuff means, and gunpowder and primer and shell casings and bullets. Interesting, but the takeaway here was Victor Murillo was assigned to analyze the weapons that were retrieved from the home in 2021. That's what he was doing back then. And turns out, as we knew, none of those firearms were a match to that. Ammunition did not come from any of the firearms in the home. He confirms this. Next up on the stand, DCI Crime Lab, also specializing in firearms and ballistics. Her name was Kristen Hart. She was tasked 3 years later in 2024 with analyzing the firearms that were found 3 years later at Houston Danker's residence. She analyzed a couple handguns and such and discovered that they were not a match to what was found at the scene. But then lo and behold, Houston's .22 caliber Ruger rifle, I know that's not how you say that, but you guys know what I'm talking about, was a match. The gun that was given to her by the deputy at the Tama County Sheriff's Office, that was given to him by Bradley Seek, which was given to him by Houston Danker. Quite a chain of custody there, but it was a match. Houston Danker's gun was the gun used in the killing of Ryan Cooper. We now have that confirmed and on the record. Next up, Brenda Reinhart came on again, DNA analyst. When they retrieved Houston's .22 caliber rifle, she was charged with trying to see if there was any DNA evidence on the gun. Surprise, this was 3 years later, and there was not. That was the extent of her testimony. So the next witness, seventh witness of the day, by the way, which most of them were quick, but it was just a lot of them. Seventh witness of the day, DCI Special Agent Holly Witt. She got on to talk about location data from Snapchat, from US Cellular, from Google. And she kind of went through this whole thing about how like geo-targeting works with Snapchat. They use IP addresses, they use GPS, they use cell phone data to collect their information. And then, of course, how US Cellular's records are going to be much more precise and can even track movement. So she went through all of that educational stuff. So essentially what we have is Karina's device timeline, right? So that night, the night of, starting at the sports complex for one of her children's games, stopping at the Pizza Palace, And then she arrives home at 8:17 p.m. and that was the last movement of the device. There was an outgoing call at 8:04 p.m. There was no Snapchat data after 3:34 a.m., which we saw in those text messages, but there was consistent Snapchat activity between 8 p.m. when she got home and 3:30 a.m. that morning. And then we get Houston's phone timeline from a couple of days before. What was significant there was the 3 trips that Houston made past the Cooper residence. Trip number 1 from home to Karina's, the round trip was targeted between 6:58 and 7:30 p.m. Trip number 2 took the same route but made one stop somewhere in the area, and that total trip was between 8:04 and 8:43 p.m. Trip number 3 was a little bit different. The route there was the same, but the route home was different, more rural. That word is so hard for me to say. So a slower trip home, a different route back, and that took place between 9:04 and 9:40 p.m. That was all in one day. Okay. Also, mind you that anytime Houston was close to the Cooper residence, there was Snapchat activity noted on both of their phones at those times as well. So I found that interesting. Another thing that DCS agent Holly Witt was talking about on the stand that she found noteworthy was that June 21st, so this is like 3 days after Ryan's death, Karina got new cell phone service and a new cell phone. And then the following day, June 22nd, Karina didn't, again, wait, I guess that makes sense. Because they confiscated her phone. Okay, so maybe that's not as interesting as we thought. They confiscated her phone. She went out and got a new phone and new service. I mean, okay. Makes sense. But here is an interesting thing. That wasn't as interesting as I had thought it was when I heard it, because it just clicked in my head why she did that. But the interesting thing is that the day after, if I see, my kids must have had the door open today and I'm going to fuss. There's like 3 flies in my bedroom and I can't. So the following day on June 22nd, Karina appears to try to log into Snapchat, but it's a new device. I'm losing my brains. June 22nd, Karina attempts to log into Snapchat, but it's a new device. So what's it going to ask for? It's going to ask for your password. It's an unrecognized device. We need your password. Karina, this is what they were able to recover from the Google data. Karina logs into Google Chrome, accesses Snapchat, resets her Snapchat password via like email confirmation and all that stuff. And then guess what she did? She logs into Snapchat at that time and delete account, gone. Just deleted Snapchat. Was like, good riddance, get off my phone. And interesting to me because remember, Houston searching shortly after the death of Ryan, if I delete my Snapchat account, will my Snapchat message history be deleted? Like, will it be gone for good? Surprise, guys. Twas not. Final witness that took the stand, Dr. Kelly Cruz. She's the associate medical examiner. And of course, she is responsible for autopsies, forensic pathology, all of that stuff. And she took the stand briefly and just confirmed to us cause of Ryan's death were the 2 fatal gunshot wounds to the face, which she went into saying she had no idea which one came first. They couldn't determine that, obviously, but that either one of those wounds would have been fatal without the other. They were both fatal injuries. He would not have survived either one, even without the other, if that makes sense. And then also, she also mentioned the stippling on his face, confirming that it was a close range shot, both shots. After Dr. Kelly Cruz was dismissed from the stand, the state has rested. We're done. We're done with the state. Defense will start presenting its case tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'm so interested to see. Obviously, we know they're going the route of Karina being, essentially a victim herself, a victim to Houston Danker's manipulation or abuse or those kinds of things. So I know that, we already know they're going with that, but Like, how are they going to prove it? Like I said on Court TV, I was seeing a bunch of legal analysts talking about how it's very unlikely that Karina Cooper will testify. And that may be true, but the question remains right here in the front of my little brain. So how are they going to prove this? What do they have? Or what are they going to present to us that is going to change our minds, I wonder? I'm ready to find out. Mind is still open. Maybe they'll change my path. But we shall see. That was it. It was a lot of witnesses, but they were all pretty quick. Court let go early again today. It's very efficient courtroom, this one. I love the judge. He is fantastic. He just seems like this, I don't know, he's just so pleasant and accommodating, and I don't know, I just like him a lot. I enjoy watching him on the bench. Anyway, yeah, that was it. I'm exhausted. Today was a lot, and so I am gonna just kind of go decompress a little bit, put my little feet up, and we're gonna pick this back up again tomorrow. I'm gonna do my best, as always, to listen, take notes, and give an update. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me through this trial so far. It has been so much fun talking to everybody and hearing everybody's thoughts, and it's been really great for me. And I really just appreciate all of you so much for showing up. So until I see you again, please stay safe, keep asking questions, and keep unraveling. Love you.